So I was sitting in a coaching session recently with a client who was lamenting some of their career mistakes that they've made. And I was sharing some wisdom about what I thought that they should do in certain circumstances. This person was stuck in a career path that they didn't really want to do, and they felt pressure to do so. And I started diving into a story about my own background, and it got me thinking that a lot of the wisdom, if you could call it that I pull from is actually based on stuff that I've done in my own past. And I thought it might be an interesting exercise to put together a series of videos of some of the major career mistakes that I've personally made and how I've arrived where I am today. So that's what this video is going to be all about. This is going to be the first in maybe a series, and if it feels right, I'll continue to do it. But maybe at the end of the day, these videos are more for me as some sort of therapy than anything else. So one of the biggest career mistakes that I made, and this is really the genesis for this series of videos, is this idea of societal pressure. And I think I have actually succumbed to it myself. And what I mean by that is there is a societal pressure that we sometimes create ourselves, that we think we're supposed to play a role that is predefined for us. I think back to my own career and how I kind of got started, and most people don't know this about me, but I started off early in my life. I was really into music. I played drums, and I was playing guitar, and I was writing a lot of songs and playing in bands and all this stuff. And I had these probably delusions of grandeur that I was going to be some rock star when I grew up. In fact, when I was asked that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I knew I wanted to follow my passion. I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be a musician.
I was once a drummer in a band.
So I was fortunate that I had very supportive parents who encouraged me to follow my dreams. And so I applied for and enrolled in a pretty well-known music school. And some of my instructors were people that I would see in these magazines that I used to read, these drumming magazines, and I would have them on my wall, like pictures of them on my wall, and they were endorsed by my favorite brands of cymbals and drums. And here I am sitting in front of them, and they're giving me private instruction, and it was pretty intense and pretty humbling. So here I'm in this music school, I'm taking classes, I'm doing my gen eds, I'm doing all the stuff that I need to do, and furiously practicing to try to keep up with this blistering pace that this school provided. It was a big challenge. But then I had a conversation with somebody who was on a waiting list for the program that I wanted to get into. And they were also talking about the amount of money that they would make when they graduated. And I'm sitting here thinking about the amount of money that I was spending on tuition, and the payout at the end was, there was no guarantee I was even going to get into this particular degree program for potentially a couple of years. Here I am thinking to myself, I'm going to be a starving musician with a very large student loan payment to pay off. And so I started second guessing my decision to go to this music school. Then one day, my brother happened to be going to Penn State. And as you know, I'm a Penn State fan. If you've watched any of my videos, I'm a big Penn State football fan. But there's a reason for that. My brother actually was at Penn State at the time I was going to this music school, and I would go on weekends to go visit him occasionally, and here I would show up at this university, they had the football games, they had this like college town, and it was really pretty awesome.
Let's party.
It was such a different experience than what I was getting at the music school, which is very small, niche. It was in the middle of a big city, and here I am out in this traditional university setting. And I kind of got in awe of it, and I started talking to some people about what the reality of going to a traditional school would be. And I thought to myself, well, music is truly my passion, but I'm not going to make any money at it, and all of my peers will be making a lot more money than me when they graduate because they're all going to these kind of traditional schools. So I decided to transfer to Penn State. And then when I met with the counselors at Penn State and I sat down and looked at what credits would transfer, I'd already invested a huge sum of money into the first year of college at this music school. In fact, it probably cost double what Penn State did. And I was blowing through some of the money that had been saved up for this. And I wanted to make sure that as many credits would transfer in. So that was when I was talking to the academic advisor. They suggested a few different degree programs. And I actually had thought that I wanted to go into a marketing program, something creative and more in the marketing space. But as we were looking through my transcripts, we realized that the marketing program wouldn't accept that many credits, so I would basically be starting over again. And I, at the time, had thought, well, I already invested a year into this, so I asked them the question, well, what degrees would I be able to get where I can transfer as many credits in as possible? And there was a couple of weird ones that I didn't even know what they were, and then one was labor and industrial relations. And I said, what the heck is labor and industrial relations? And the academic advisor said, well, it's like labor unions and like human resources, and it's like kind of working with people on the back end of a company. And I said, well, I guess that's okay. I still really didn't know what it was. And then I was talking to my mom, who happened to work in human resources, and she said, oh, that's like what I do. You could work with labor unions, you could be a human resource person, you can do kind of all these different things. And she's like, it would be good for you. And I think that advice was valid at that time. But again, I still didn't really know what it was. I just knew that all of my peers were going to be graduating at a certain point in time, and I couldn't fall behind them. And if I was to take the marketing program, which was my first choice, that I would be at least a semester behind everybody else, and that was just not something that I could do. I had to keep up with the societal pressure that I created for myself. So I started into this degree program, and I'm studying it, and I'm realizing pretty early on, like, I mean, it's okay. But I don't think that I was truly passionate about what I was studying. I thought it was interesting because there's some history, especially with like labor unions and the employment movements that happened over the course of years, and kind of how we got where we were at that point in time. And so that part was interesting. And then when we got into employment law and some of these other like comparative labor relations, I remember having to do research papers about the labor relations system in South Africa versus Ireland or something. It was just like,
hey, what am I doing with my life?
And then I'm looking around at all my peers in the program itself, in the labor and industrial relations program, and they're all kind of geeked up, getting ready to start their careers, because then now we're getting close to the graduation, and they're all going off and interviewing, and this one's getting a job offer with this one, this one's going off getting a job offer for this other well-known company. And I know that I'm supposed to be doing the same thing as everybody else, so I'm off there interviewing for these human resources jobs and not really sure why I'm interviewing for them to begin with. I didn't have this like deep burning passion for this type of work. And I did feel like a little bit of a fish out of water. I felt like I should have been doing something else. Like I was like almost like I wasn't supposed to be here. That kind of feeling. And again, it was all based on my desire to keep pace with my peer group and make a certain amount of money coming out of college, which in reality is pretty funny, because the amount of money I made my first job out of college was probably not much more than a musician would make. But at the time, that seemed like a really big deal. And so sure enough, I get my first job in human resources at a huge engineering company, and I start doing, kind of this thing. But I'm working through my early career, and again, I'm just the whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not where I should be. And some of the advice that I had received at that time was, well, what do you like about what you're currently doing? And I said, well, there's some aspects of it that I like. There's some aspects that I don't like. I like some of the employee relations stuff, like solving employee problems. I like that component. So that was kind of a check. And then I liked the recruiting piece, the getting people jobs. That was always a very rewarding component of it. So I kind of boiled it down to those two. And as I moved further into my career, I kind of narrowed it down to, I want to just focus on one or two things. And it really ended up becoming recruiting. And so I kind of made it a career of talent acquisition, recruiting. And that's kind of how I got to where I am today. And I'll probably talk more about my story in a future video. If you think about it, it's kind of interesting and a little bit irresponsible, because you're being asked to make life-altering decisions at an age that you're probably not equipped to do so. And at age 17, when I was declaring my major or declaring the type of career that I wanted to do, I wasn't equipped to really think this stuff through and make these decisions that would have long-lasting, kind of permanent implications. And what I've realized with the benefit of hindsight, as I move into the middle part of my career, I can look back very clearly and say, I was influenced by societal pressure, and most of it was absolutely self-created. Nobody was telling me you need to do this, or you need to do that, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that, or you're gonna fall behind everybody else. Because the reality is yeah, maybe I would have fallen behind by a semester, maybe two, or maybe a year behind the rest of my friends who graduated and be working. But the idea at the time was so catastrophic. I can't be 1 year behind my friends. They're gonna be working in their careers, and they're gonna be having these jobs, and they're going to be so much further ahead than me. And I allowed that to hijack my finding my true passion, and maybe doing that marketing career path, or maybe really exploring the music thing if I could have figured out a way to make that happen. But I wouldn't have made the decisions that I made if I could go back in my current version. And I know some people will be saying, wait a minute, you have an entire YouTube channel dedicated to careers and recruiting and how to get jobs. And I will say that component of it I'm absolutely passionate about. Am I a passionate HR person? Probably not. Would I do something different if I had the choice? Probably would if I could go back in time. However, I like where I am today. But it did take me a lot of time and a lot of mistakes in order to get here. So what I would say to the person who is trying to make these decisions, especially early in their career, if you're even in college and or in a trade school, and you're kind of at a crossroads early in your career, and you're just not really sure what you want to do, and you're afraid of the societal pressure, think long and hard about the long-term implications of that, because the decisions that you make at that point in your life, you may not realize it, but it will have long-lasting, and I'm talking 40 plus years of career impact for you. And now the current version of me is looking back saying the idea of me losing a year, or maybe being inconvenienced by a few $1,000s in extra student loans to restart from scratch or near scratch is pretty laughable, because I would have made that up years ago, and who knows where I would be in my career today. Maybe I'd be doing something that I was truly, truly passionate about. Is it a societal pressure that is influencing your decision making? And is it self-created? So that would probably be the first major career mistake that I made, and that one has shaped my entire career, not gonna lie. But unfortunately, that's not the only career mistake that I've made, and I've got a bunch more that I'm gonna cover in future videos, so stay tuned for that. But if you're somebody that's listening to this saying, yeah, that sounds like me, and I'm not sure where I should go, I actually do offer some private one-on-one coaching sessions, and we should hash out some of this stuff, because you could potentially avoid making a similar mistake that I did, which could have 40 to 50 years of lasting implication. It's really not worth it. So you can reach me through my website for that if you check out alifeafterlayoff.com. But anyway, if you're interested in hearing the rest of my mistakes, make sure you hit that subscribe button to follow along. As always, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.